Hey everyone, what's up? I'm going to try to make a short video here. I know the Rockets lost, which no big deal. In the video I said there is a narrative with it in regards to the Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors game that was played on the same day that Eugene Cernan died. And I've been following this huge space theme, right? So obviously the Rockets make a lot of sense into that. But there's a whole lot of connections in regards to Houston and some other stuff that's going on that's connected to my own life. And, you know, it's really interesting stuff to me. And a lot of it has to do with the number 175. And after making my last video, I discovered that Golden State in reverse gematria equals 175. I also just discovered today, last year a big deal in regards to the Cavs and the Warriors was when Steve Kerr came back on January 22nd and the Warriors won with 122 points. Golden State equals 102. But that was also the same day that the Cavs fired their coach David Blatt, and then they hired Tyronn Lue and whatnot. David Blatt also equals 175 in gematria, in reverse gematria, just like Golden State. And another big deal was the space theme that I'm following, and John Glenn died 175 days before the NBA Finals began. And of course, Houston Rockets equal 175, Golden State equals 175. There's a whole bunch of other connections I've been talking about in regards to Isaiah Thomas, and also Isaiah Thomas, the ex-Piston player, right? The guy who tore his Achilles tendon. And there's something they've been showing me that goes back to my very first ever, whatever you want to call it, conspiracy YouTube video. And I even talk about the Los Angeles Lakers and Kobe Bryant tearing his Achilles against the Golden State Warriors. But anyway, Boston Marathon equals 175 in gematria. And the brother who died, his name was Tamerlan. And if you look up Tamerlan, he's in history, he's a famous Celtic warrior. And then, of course, we have Polarization Nation saying that Zach is the other Tsarnaev brother. We have the Mark Wahlberg movie coming out, or that came out, in regards to the Boston bombing. Isaiah Thomas, also like the Detroit Pistons player, his name in gematria equals 175. But moral of the story, Tamerlan is also the Celtic warrior. That's what I talked about in this video. And, that we had, what was it? Sheamus knocking out Jeff Hardy's tooth the same day that Isaiah Thomas lost his tooth. Sheamus, the Celtic warrior. The interesting thing in regards to my own life is I actually know a kid who seriously looks really close to Sheamus. And we even call him Sheamus, and his name is Jake Slater. And his name in gematria equals 168, like Cleveland Cavaliers. And a bunch of this stuff goes back to my best friend. Best friend equals 168 in gematria. Missing tooth equals 168 in gematria. So, anyway, in a previous video, I talked about how Isaiah Thomas's sister, the car that she supposedly died in, it looks very similar to the car that I own, but my girlfriend mostly drives this car. Even the front end on this car, I didn't take a picture of the front. The front end is even smashed up a bit because the first day that I actually owned it, because I bought it from my dad or whatever, the first day I ever owned it, on my way home from work, I hit a deer. So just kind of interesting, the front end smashed up. It looks a lot like my car that my girlfriend drives. And then when he lost his tooth, the tooth that he lost, my girlfriend also lost that same tooth this year. I can't remember the exact date that she lost that tooth, but she's missing that same tooth that Isaiah Thomas lost. So his sister dies in a car that looks like the one she drives. She's missing that same tooth. And when he lost that tooth, let me find it here. The first thing that I thought of in regards to missing tooth is a long time ago, I was at my best friend's house. I have the date in here somewhere. March 24th, 2009. And I'll just never forget this night. We both had to work late, and he DVR'd. I wanted to watch the Lakers game, and he DVR'd both the games that were on. And we were watching this game, and Ron Artest was talking crap, and his tooth fell out. And it was seriously, we were partying, whatever. It was a hilarious night. I even texted my friend and asked him if he remembered it, and he totally remembers it. One of the funniest nights ever, But what I noticed is that Ron Artest was playing for the Houston Rockets at the time, and they were playing the Utah Jazz, and my girlfriend's name is Jasmine, and people even call her Jazz sometimes, so possibly a stretch, but it's just still pretty interesting. They were playing the Jazz. He played for the Houston Rockets. My best friend's name in gematria equals 175, just like Houston Rockets. And among all the other ones I just showed you, to put it in perspective, just the other day, he went to the Rock Fest that was in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and he got to see Soundgarden, right? And for whatever the reason, he went with this older partier guy that, we don't really hang out with that much, but he's a cool guy. But it was just kind of odd that he would go to a concert with him and his kids, and he was Snapchatting me or whatever about it. And anyway, that guy's name in gematria, this is what we call him, Buggy McGinn, 175. And they got to see Soundgarden just before Chris Cornell died. Soundgarden equals 175. I mean, Chris Cornell was even originally reported dead on 17/5, May 17th, and then they later changed it to May 18th. But anyway, look at that. So space theme in gematria equals 175. NASA in satanic gematria equals 175. Just a whole bunch of 175. So just interesting that Golden State would equal that as well. And another interesting thing about when Isaiah Thomas lost his tooth, he lost his tooth against the Washington Wizards, which is my best friend's favorite NBA team, the Washington Wizards. And then the only other game I remember of anyone losing a tooth and actually watching it and having this memory was against the Jazz, So just interesting. Isaiah Thomas loses the same tooth against my best friend's favorite team. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, but his brother also died in a car accident in 2004. He died on May 11th, 5/11. Remember, Saturn in Jewish gematria equals 5/11. The car that his brother was driving was a Saturn. That's the model or whatever, the make of the car, a Saturn. He died in a Saturn on May 11th. And there's a whole bunch of other Saturn references in regards to all of that. But me and him were Michigan Wolverine football fans, and we took that Saturn earlier in the year. On September 6th, Michigan played Houston, and that was the very first ever Michigan football game that I had ever went to. I believe it was his first ever Michigan football game too. Just me and him went, and we took the Saturn to watch Michigan beat Houston 50-3, and then later in that year or whatever, and that was in 2003, but later on in May of 2004, his brother died in that same Saturn. And then, of course, the Rockets end up losing on 5/11 to the Utah Jazz on the 13th anniversary of my best friend's brother dying and whatnot. We even got this stat on 5/11. In regards to the Rockets, they have the best home win percentage when facing elimination with a 17-5 record. I guess I also forgot to mention that his brother died in 2004, which was the year the Detroit Pistons beat the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals, and both of them equal 175 in gematria. This was also the LeBron's rookie season, and it was the first season the Rockets played in the Toyota Center, right? And then Isaiah Thomas's sister dies in the Toyota Camry in King County. Camry means king. Isaiah Thomas, drafted to the Kings, age 22, war number 22. His sister died age 22. Boston equals 22. Basketball equals 22. Also, in that car wreck that my best friend's brother was in, my cousin Timmy was also in that car wreck, and he's the one who ran for help. and his full name equals 93 like Saturn, and they both have the same middle name and a whole bunch of other stuff. I have a post on it. I don't want to make this too long, but like I said, come to my blog. You can find all of this stuff. But something that I didn't put together was my cousin Timmy. He is literally the only Houston Rockets fan that I know other than his brother. Timmy and Ryan are the only Houston Rockets fans I know out of all my friends and family and whatever else, you know. Timmy we even used to call T-Mac because his favorite player was, or T-Murph because his favorite player was T-Mac. And if you recall, back in January, I was talking about his brother who lived in Pembroke Pines, Florida, which is really close to the Fort Lauderdale airport. And the very next day, we got the supposed attack at the Fort Lauderdale airport. My cousin Timmy was also Fred Flintstone the year that I was Jesus on Halloween. And I have videos on this in the mix, or you can come to the blog and find it. But he was Fred Flintstone, and I was Jesus, and we went to the bar together. And my uncle, Barney, also died in January this year, and he died 175 days after his birthday. And he died just before getting on Highway 175, where the high school team, the Falcons, play. And it was showing me all this stuff in regards to Dan Marino and The Simpsons and stuff. And the only episode of The Simpsons Dan Marino was on was when the Falcons lost in the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos and a whole bunch of other stuff. The reason that the Flintstones was so important is because my Uncle Barney, his wife, his name is Betty, like Betty and Barney and the Flintstones. And my uncle's name equals 166. The Flintstones had 166 episodes. They were named after a TV show called The Honeymooners. If you just write Honeymooners, it equals 166. He gave me this Dan Marino jersey, which was a big part of it. And I found out he gave that jersey to me at the Gold Slipper, a restaurant in town. Gold Slipper equals 166. I asked my mom what his birthday was, 166 days after his birthday. So hopefully this is making sense. But there's a lot of interesting connections in my own life. I also wanted to point out one other thing about my best friend's brother. That same night or whatever, I went to his memorial page on Facebook to whatever, just look at it again and see if anyone had wrote any comments and whatever. And the first one I see, there's only 3 people. Only 3 people. The very first one to write a message, his name, Sean Houston, or it's probably Houston, because I have a cousin with the last name spelled this way, and his last name is Houston. I don't know this kid. I'm assuming I should probably know him. I just doesn't ring a bell, But I'm assuming that he's a cousin to the Sturgills on the different side or something, But just interesting. Houston Sean. He even has his name written reverse on here. Only 2 other people had left comments. Corey Dodcheski and Wade Nelson, and then Kimberly Miller responded or whatever to Wade Nelson. What's interesting, Wade Nelson equals 112, just like Houston. Kimberly Miller equals 181, just like Houston, Texas. And Corey Dodcheski, I even mentioned on my blog previously in regards to the Happy Days actress dying on the 112th day of the year, and she died in, it's not pronounced like that, Corydon, Indiana, but it's still interesting that it looks like that and whatever. And that's what I even mentioned in this blog post. Corey Dodcheski, we call him Corydon. And then she dies in a town that looks a lot like his name and whatnot. So moving on, somebody had pointed out that Mike Brown, who is the interim coach for the Golden State Warriors right now, his birthday is 3-5, and NASA equals 35, King James equals 35. The game I was talking about in regards to the day that Gene Cernan died, the Cavs lost to the Warriors by 35 points. The Warriors got their 35th win. Kevin Durant wears number 35. And Draymond Green even supposedly hurt LeBron James when the score was 35-52. There's a whole bunch of other 35. Catholic equals 35. which ties into the flat earth and Kyrie Irving believing in the flat earth. You know, the Catholic Church sent Christopher Columbus to find the New World. The CC sent the CC. Mike Brown, born in Columbus, Ohio. You know, Columbus, Ohio is named in honor of Christopher Columbus. Even if you go back to like August 8th, I think, I made a video about Bow Wow, Lil Bow Wow retiring from rap. And it was connected to the NBA and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Bow Wow, also born in Columbus, Ohio. Even, think about it, Chris Cornell. I know Chris Cornell died in Detroit, but Detroit's in this mix of with the 175 and whatnot. But he died in Detroit, but he died just before playing a show in Columbus, Ohio. Chris Cornell, CC, you know, died just before playing in Columbus, Ohio, named after another CC. In regards to Catholic, too, I know I said I was going to make this video short. It never works that way. But Catholic, check out Pope Francis. Pope Francis in Gematria equals 175. Even, well, I don't have it pulled up here, but in Jewish Gematria, just the word Pope also equals 175. I think I said NASA equals 35, hopefully, but NASA equals 35. Another special one is China, and China equals 35. The reason that this is significant is because the Rockets opened up their season this year against China. They played Shanghai, and then the Rockets and the Kings were the only two teams that went to China and played games in the preseason. And, of course, just lots of Kings symbolism going on in previous stuff, especially with Isaiah Thomas and much more. But anyway, when they were there, the Rockets had a player named Bobby Brown who graffitied on the Great Wall of China. And think about the other famous Bobby Brown. He was married to Whitney Houston and whatever. This guy graffitis the Great Wall of China. We have a president who wants to build a wall, won the election on the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down. If you remember, he even had an argument with Pope Francis about building a wall. LeBron James is on the TV show The Wall. The movie, there's even a movie called The Great Wall coming out, or just came out. There's another army movie about the wall. There's all kinds of wall symbolism. And just think about when they made these movies. They started making these movies and the ideas of these movies way before Donald Trump was even running for president, you know? So it's all pre-planned everything else. It's just so obvious when you think about it. But anyway, moving on. Well, you know what? Even in regards to China, China's space program has even been excelling and getting better recently and whatnot. So kind of interesting. There's a whole bunch of other 35 stuff that I could mention. Like even the Lakers traded away Lou Williams to the Rockets, and they ended up getting Corey Brewer. Corey Brewer, also born on 3/5. So obviously that was done for a reason, to show us the 35 stuff. But what's interesting about Mike Brown then? So hopefully I didn't lose you. When I looked up Mike Brown, I noticed that the colleges that he went to Mesa Community College, and then he went to San Diego. And this really sticks out to me because out of all the places other than Iowa that I have lived, I have only lived in Arizona, and I lived in Mesa, Arizona. And I moved there because I was in a band with my cousin, and just me and him moved there. We both went to the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences. And when we graduated, I ended up moving back to Iowa, and he moved to San Diego to work for a live sound company called Sound Image. And whatever, you know, long story, not going to go that much more into it, but just interesting. We both lived in Mesa, and then he moved to San Diego. He lives in Ocean Beach, which is like pretty much right off the ocean. But his name is Christopher Houston, and it is literally, you know, Christopher, and it is spelled Houston. And, you know, even growing up, watching him play like little league stuff. They'd even say his name was Houston instead of Houston. Also, in regards to the Rockets, San Diego is where the Rockets were originally from. They were the San Diego Rockets before they became the Houston Rockets. San Diego they were called the Rockets even because they developed the Atlas rockets, the ones that sent John Glenn up to space and whatnot. John Glenn also part of the Mercury 7. I believe he was the last one of it to die. And Mercury 7 equals 168 like Cleveland Cavaliers. Mike Brown also, of course, the former Cleveland Cavalier coach, the former Laker coach, who was replaced by Mike D'Antoni, who was the Houston Rockets coach. He was the coach when Kobe tore his Achilles, and then the Lakers beat the Rockets in order to make the playoffs, and then they got swept by the Spurs. And then Dwight Howard leaves and goes to the Rockets, and so on. Look at the gematria of Mesa, Arizona, though. Mesa, Arizona. 175 in reverse, just like Houston Rockets, just like Golden State. So, I mean, seriously, what are the odds that he goes to these two places? And that's, the last two places my cousin had lived. My cousin's last name even looks like Houston. When I lived in Mesa, also, my best friend came down, Chris Sturgill, who equals 175. And I went to my very first ever NBA game. It was the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Phoenix Suns. Even Kevin Durant, number 35, scored 35 points, was 3 of 5 on three-pointers. Also, whatever, I can't remember what the stipulation was. Something happened, and somehow he got extra flight miles or something, and these other people needed to go on the plane. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he ended up staying longer on the day he was supposed to leave. He stayed like until way late at night instead of leaving in the afternoon. So we went to another NBA game, and it was the Suns versus the Celtics. And in my previous video, I talked about how there's all these connections from Isaiah Thomas and whatnot, and that's connected to Washington, that's connected to Houston. And also think about it. I went to the Thunder game, the Thunder versus the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant Kevin Durant drafted to the Seattle Supersonics. And then we got all the Celtic stuff that's connected up to the Seattle area. So, you know what I mean? It's just some pretty strange stuff. Pretty strange that there would even be that connection there. Lots of Houston stuff in my life. But what does it all mean? That's the thing. Like, I see all of this, but I still have trouble figuring out what it all means. What exactly is the point? I mean, it sure seems like our whole lives are scripted, and that's what I'm pointing out. I mean, even making this video right now is part of what I'm supposed to do in my life. Maybe someday this night will come up for some weird reason, And it is interesting because if you look up Kabbalah, where a lot of this stems back to, Kabbalah is basically, it's Jewish mysticism, and they use this basically to communicate with God, or infinity, or Ein Sof, or however you pronounce it, which is basically the representation of infinity, which is, in turn, basically God. But, I mean, there's a lot more to explain in regards to that. I want to keep moving on because, I mean, that is a very important thing to understand, but it's something that I'm just going to ramble on about. It's something that you need to have conversations with other people about because, I don't know the full meaning of it. I don't know exactly truly how it is being used. I just see that it is going on, And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that there are people manipulating whatever is happening. And there are also people who do not want other people to try and understand get a better understanding of the things that have been being shown. All of it also in turn makes me wonder a lot about what God is the one that actually is the infinity of all of this. Is it Saturn? Because there's a lot of interesting things in regards to all this Gabriel stuff that I keep mentioning. In Gematria, Angel Gabriel equals 93, just like Saturn. Gabriel told Mary that she was going to have the Jesus Christ or whatever, and Mary in Gematria, at Jewish Gematria, equals 511, just like Saturn. Possibly, and I know people don't want to hear this, but it's just a thought. Maybe Jesus is truly the son of God, but he's actually the son of Saturn. And don't be mad or anything for thinking something like that, because I'm somebody who thinks. It's not that I'm telling you that I absolutely know this. It's just some thoughts that have crossed my mind at some point in time, And I keep seeing all of these things in regards to Gabriel. And I mean, when you look up Gabriel and you look up Islam, you find out that possibly, the angel Gabriel that Muhammad was scared of was actually not the true angel Gabriel, or maybe he truly was, Even Jesus supposedly crucified on the 93rd day of the year, April 3rd. I mean, doesn't that just make you wonder a tiny bit? But who knows? I mean, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying that's some thoughts that have crossed my mind. Anyway, like I said, I want to hurry up and finish this video. I just wanted to show one last thing in regards to this game on the day that Eugene Cernan died. Eugene Cernan, the last person supposedly on the moon and whatnot. And I talked about this game. The Cavs played the Warriors on this day. And see, they won by 35. And the Warriors scored 126 points. Gene Cernan died 1 month, 26 days before his birthday on Pi Day, March 14th, which is also Steph Curry's birthday. Cleveland scored 91 points. Rockets equal 91. But also space equals 91. There's a whole bunch of king symbolism in regards to Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth super connected to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Queen Elizabeth II equals 168, just like Cleveland Cavaliers, but she turned 91 years old this year on the 111th day of the year. The NBA Finals equal 111. And if she dies, her son King Charles will become the new king. He'll become King Charles, or Prince Charles, but he'll become King Charles III. And the first two King Charleses were the kings during the English Civil War, and they were the son and the grandson of King James, right? And last year we had the Cavs winning on the anniversary of the birthday of the real King James. His name is King James. King James equals 35. Anyway, if you go from that game or that day that Eugene Cernan died, it's a span of 57 days. And in my previous videos, in regards to him, I talked about how moon equals 57. But in learning reverse gematria, I learned that NBA Finals also equals 57. And this big game connecting to NASA and Eugene Cernan, 57 days before Eugene Cernan's birthday, also Steph Curry's birthday. Cernan in a reverse reduced equals 35. Glenn equals 112, a Jewish, like Houston. There's a whole lot going on with it too, because a Cavalier is a follower of King Charles during the English Civil War. Also want to note, Queen Elizabeth is 91 years old this year. King Charles III equals 91. The big split supposedly between the Catholic Church and the Church of England was because of King Henry VIII. And King Henry VIII was married to Catherine of Aragon, and she was the daughter of Queen Isabella, who was the one who sent Christopher Columbus to discover the New World and whatnot. But interesting, his name in Gematria, 191, like the Society of Jesus, right, that was founded 7 years before he died. He was replaced by his son Edward VI. He was born on 10/12, the same day that Columbus discovered America. But anyway, peace.